Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and for some reason, the titles did not change. Why didn't they change? Nobody knows, but that is besides the point. Regardless, we're going to go ahead and get into this first segment, which is actually not going to be talking about the Rams versus the Bills. It's going to be talking about Juan Soto and his record deal with the Mets and how it breaks every single Yankees fan's heart. And I'm so incredibly distraught at this. But hold on, I'm just adjusting the title. So go ahead and give me 1 second. Here we go. All right. And I don't know why it didn't update. I literally just updated this a few seconds ago. I don't know why it didn't update, but there we go. Now it should update. And all right, so we're gonna go ahead and talk about this new deal with the Mets that Juan Soto was just signed. I am so saddened. And we'll talk about that in the first segment. Then in the second segment, we're going to get into the college football bowl game, just recapping the results of all of these games, and as well as looking at the playoff bracket, because now the bracket has finally been finalized just off of the results of the bowl games. We're also gonna talk about Josh Allen and his ridiculous game against the Rams, most likely solidifying himself as the MVP favorite after that game. And then we're going to get into a recap of all of the NFL games that happened over the weekend. And I'm not going to go too in depth because not only am I late, because we got really held up in the meeting talking about all sorts of things sports related. I mean, there was so much that happened over the weekend. I mean, especially, I didn't even get to talking about basketball. But we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Again, I'm going to try to make these segments crunch in a little bit because I was a little bit late. I apologize for that. So before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, whether it's anything that you're dying to share, we're all ears. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or, they help. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this first segment, which is going to be talking about the man, the myth, the legend, the snake, the just betraying and breaking my heart, Juan Soto. He obviously there wasn't really a high chance that Juan Soto was going to be a player for the Yankees anymore after that one miracle season where the Yankees ended up losing in the World Series. He was going to, based off of just how he was playing last season, he was going to demand a huge contract and he was going to demand a lot of money. And the Mets were the team that was willing to spend all of that money. They ended up offering Juan Soto a 15-year, $765 million contract, which surpasses Shohei Ohtani's contract with the LA Dodgers. And now this is the richest. This is the most expensive contract signed in Major League Baseball history. He is going to be the richest player in terms of contract alone in the MLB. And this breaks my heart. Now, the Yankees, of course, offered him a deal as well. They offered him $760 million in the span of 16 years. But, the Mets having way more money to spend and being a little bit more flexible with their contracts ended up giving him way more money. This is a sad day. I am having a very bad day, as Stephen A. Smith would say. I am upset. I am distraught. I am crying. And this is the worst day of my life. I thought that when I thought that my it couldn't get worse for me. I mean, being a Giants fan is already difficult enough. Now I have to deal with this. Juan Soto deciding to join the team that's a few blocks down not even a few blocks down. I mean, like, I'm being a little bit dramatic with the distance, but it's like that's literally just a few places, a few minutes away. He goes ahead and he joins that team. Like, really? Of all the teams that he could have picked, of all the teams that could have decided to give him that money, he went with the other New York team that I don't even want to mention their names. That's how much I don't like this team. But this is just a sad day. It is a terrible day for me. I am having a very bad day. So, as we know, one of the winners of this move is, of course, Juan Soto. But another winner of this move is Scott Boras. And there are like a couple rule of thumbs that I like to think about. So one is that your client is signing a contract worth $765 million. You're an automatic winner. But to be serious about that, like 10 months ago, people were lining up to declare that Boras had lost his fastball. And that won't be a major talking point at all in this offseason. In addition to Soto's historic contract, Boras has already fetched paydays worth more than $20 million annually for lefties Blake Snell and Yusei Kikuchi. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Forgive me if I messed up that last name. But he's cleared the $15 million mark for the righty Frankie Montes and the outfielder Tyler O'Neill, and came close to it with lefty Matthew Boyd. So Boras still has ample ground to cover this winter as he represents Corbin Burns and Alex Bregman, but again, this is a huge win for him. Now, of course, the biggest loser of this whole thing is the New York Yankees. So there's no replacing Juan Soto. This Dominican is on a completely different playing field than most hitters. And no free agent or realistic trade candidate is going to come close as of right now. The question for the Yankees is how are they going to improve several parts of their lineup in an attempt to replace Juan Soto in, regarding his departure. So I have no idea how they're going to replace him. Again, it's really like he is a phenomenal player. It's really difficult to replace somebody as fantastic as Juan Soto. But ultimately, it's hard to see the Yankees really walking away from this offseason feeling better about their roster without Juan Soto. It's like there's no realistic way for that. And of course, the Mets, they are a clear-cut winner of this, despite that they're giving Juan Soto so much money. But there's no overstating how big of an addition Soto is to a Mets lineup who already made it deep into the postseason in the MLB and just came basically one series away from making it to the World Series and having a World Series competition between the Yankees, right? Like, this Mets team is already a good team, and it's a very hold on just one second. I just realized that there was somebody in the comments. Is the Yankees going to sign Santander? I have no idea, but regardless, this is just the Yankees are not going to be in a better position with him or without him now that Juan Soto is gone. It's really just like, again, I am incredibly distraught. And Soto's presence near the top of the Mets order is going to create more run-scoring chances in multiple respects. And like the Mets team is just going to be better. Like they simply are just going to be better with Juan Soto in the lineup than they would have without him. I mean, like they've made it so far. They're probably going to make the World Series in this coming year with Juan Soto. I would not be surprised. And let's face it, losing Soto to the Mets does not look great on Hal Steinbrenner's part either. Like, they stay true to their usual playbook when it comes to their top free agents. They let Soto reach the open market and made competitive offers, hoping that the interior and the power of the pin strips would do the rest. To be fair, that's usually enough. Like, that's usually enough because, whenever they see the logo, they're like, ooh, I want to be a part of that. New York did not seem to pull out all the stops to keep, unfortunately. It wasn't enough in this instance. And we'll see how the remainder of the offseason is going to turn out. Surely the Yankees are going to redirect at least some of their funds for Soto elsewhere. But as it stands, the Yankees have lowered both their ceiling and floor for the foreseeable future without having Juan Soto. And that's all I can really talk about now. Again, I was very, very late for this live, so I would have talked about it a little bit more, but I can't. So now we're going to go ahead and get into this second segment where I look at the college football playoffs and the bowl games that happen in in over the weekend. So I'll be right back after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. In this second segment, we're going to recap the bowl games, the results of these bowl games, and what this means for the college football playoffs. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, or anything that you guys are dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show, make it much more interactive. Or you can go ahead and use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, to send in your comments and or donations that way as well. And with that out of the way, again, I'm moving a little bit quicker than usual because I was a little bit late to this. I was late to the party, I guess you could say. So the college football playoffs, they've already been established. But let's look at the bowl games that happened over the weekend. So Boise State, they ended up beating UNLV 21-7 in this matchup. Of course, Ashton Jeanty ended up recording 200 rushing yards, 209 to be exact, and he also recorded a touchdown on the night. And the quarterback also ran for a touchdown and threw for a touchdown in this game as well. And I mean, 2 times already, Jeanty has proven that he can run the ball as well as anybody against ranked teams. A lot of people, they like to criticize Jeanty for running the ball against teams that are like rather incompetent compared to most of the other competent teams in college football. But when you go back to that Oregon game, Oregon won by a field goal. And it's not as if like Boise State was out of the game entirely. They just needed to get a stop. But Oregon is just so good on offense that they were able to just destroy that defense in any which way that they wanted to on that night. So there was really, I don't really see any sort of argument that Ashton Jeanty isn't a competent running back just because of the fact that he plays against like teams that are unranked. I mean, what are you going to do about it? What can he do about it? It's not like he can change his schedule for the team, and it's not like the team can really change the schedule. But this is the second time that Boise State has ended up, when Ashton Jeanty specifically shows the world that they can compete against ranked teams and still get the job done, right? So I don't know if this is going to boost his Heisman winning projections just based off of this performance. I don't think the bowl games have any sort of factor in that. So we'll see who wins the Heisman. I am all for Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty sharing the award. Similar to how Peyton Manning shared the award with an NFL running back when the first time he won the MVP. His first MVP was notoriously shared with I believe it was McNair. Again, I could be wrong on that. It was when I was a toddler and before I even was able to comprehend the sport of football. But regardless, again, this game was really never close. Again, 21-7. It's not like UNLV could do anything. And it seemed like UNLV, their quarterback situation, I remember their quarterback ended up quitting on them mid-season. It doesn't really seem to have affected them up until this point when they went up against Boise State, who has proven to be a rather competent team. Next game that was on Friday, the Army, they ended up beating Tulane 35-14. The Army is very, very good, and so is the Navy. I'm very excited for the Army-Navy game that's going to happen this coming week on Saturday, December 14th. I am very much looking forward to that game. But the Army, they ended up winning 35-14, as I said before. Quarterback did not play well at all, but then again, most of the Army games and most of the Navy games as well, they don't really have a competent quarterback. There were 2 running backs in the Army that were fantastic, though. Kanye Udo ended up rushing for 158 rushing yards, ended up recording 1 touchdown, but then Bryson Daly ended up recording 126 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, that is incredible. That is ridiculous rushing numbers. They only had 17 passing yards on the day, but they had 338 yards on the ground. Now, Tulane, their quarterback obviously played much better, 209 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but the ground game wasn't really all that good for Tulane. In fact, Udo, the running back for the Army, ended up recording more rushing yards in this game. Same with Bryson Daly. They ended up recording more rushing yards in this game than the entirety of Tulane did. And obviously, like, when you're losing the ground game battle as badly as that, it's really difficult to win a football game. It's really difficult. Next game, Oregon, they ended up beating Penn State. This game came down to the wire. Oregon ended up scoring the final touchdown. Gabriel ended the game with 4 passing touchdowns, 283 yards. And, of course, Jordan James ended with 2 touchdowns on the ground with 87 yards. Now, Drew Allar ended up recording 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions, which ended up costing the game for them. And there was also Katrin Allen for Penn State, who ended up rushing for 124 yards and recorded a touchdown on the day. And then there was also Nicholas Singleton, who recorded 105 rushing yards on the day. And, I mean, this fantastic play from Penn State all around. A rather underrated team, in my opinion. And we'll see how they do in this matchup going into the college football playoffs, Georgia, they ended up beating Texas again. This game was really, really ugly. It came down to an overtime rushing touchdown to seal the win for Georgia. But aside from that, the entirety of the game was very ugly. Carson Beck got hurt. And the other quarterbacks, most of the quarterbacks, in fact, in this game for Georgia, they played very bad. I mean, Beck only finished with 56 passing yards, and Gunnar Stockton only finished with 71 passing yards. So it was a very hard-fought defensive game. Quentin Ewers ended with 358 passing yards, 1 touchdown, but he threw 2 interceptions. There's growing, I don't know if this is really a hot take, but I feel like maybe starting Arch Manning for this tournament game is going to be the move. I don't know. That might be a hot take. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that. Arizona State, they ended up destroying Iowa State 45-19. A team that was expected to be at the very bottom of the Big 12 conference ended up winning the Big 12 conference in the end. That is an incredible story, a very inspirational story right there. Their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, is phenomenal. He was phenomenal in that game, 219 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And Scatabo, the running back for Arizona State, already is making a name for himself. Like, he believes that he is the best running back in the country, and he's proven it in this bowl game. 170 rushing yards on 16 attempts and 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. But again, this game was never close between Arizona State and Iowa State. And then finally, Clemson, they matched up against SMU. This game went down to the wire. Clemson won off of a field goal to win the game. That was basically how that was essentially how the game ended, because Clemson ended up getting the ball at the very end of the game. All it took was 2 plays to get them down into field goal range, and they ended up winning the game in the end, 34-31. Now, this was a very hard-fought game for both teams. The quarterback, Kevin Jennings, ended up recording 304 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He did record 1 interception. This is the quarterback for SMU. And on the ground, Brashad Smith played very well as well. He recorded 113 rushing yards. And for Clemson's side, Cade Klubnik, the quarterback for Clemson, ended with 4 passing touchdowns, 262 yards on the day. There was not much of a rushing attack coming in from Clemson, but the receivers and the passing in this game for Clemson was fantastic. So those were all the games that ended up happening over the weekend. I wish I could talk about them a little bit more in depth, but I have to go ahead and get into the other part of this, which is going to be talking about the college football playoffs and their standings. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. And this is the college football playoff bracket as it is right now. So Oregon, Georgia, Arizona, and Boise State, since they ended up winning their bowl games in the end, they end up getting the first round bye. And the other teams that ended up making the playoffs, of course, they ended up getting voted in. You have Ohio State. They ended up losing to Michigan in the very last week. So regardless, they were still the number 2 ranked team in the entirety of the nation. So it makes sense that they're still here on this list. Tennessee, they've been fantastic as well. I mean, Texas, while they did end up losing to the University of Georgia, they are still a top 5 ranked team in the college football standings. And Clemson beating SMU. Meanwhile, for some weird reason, SMU, they ended up losing to Clemson. Despite this, however, they end up getting a higher spot in the college football playoff standings as opposed to Clemson, who ends up getting the 12th seed. A little bit weird, I will say that, but again, SMU was ranked much higher than Clemson was before this bowl game, so that's sort of the reason why SMU ends up taking a higher seed as opposed to Clemson. And then this matchup right here between Notre Dame and the University of Indiana, that is going to be a great game. Like, there's so many Indiana fans, especially like on the basketball side, but like the sports fans for Indiana, they go crazy. And this is the matchup between Notre Dame and the University of Indiana. I think it is going to be a very good matchup. Probably one of the best matchups in the first round. Right next to Ohio State and Tennessee, in my opinion. And this is also going to be the first time that college teams are going to end up hosting a playoff game, because usually the playoff games are like, they're bowl games in them. They're bowl games in of themselves, right? Most of the time it'll be like, the Orange Bowl or like the Fiesta Bowl or something like that. In the previous college football playoff format, like the format that was last year. But now these teams are actually going to host playoff games, which is going to be phenomenal. The atmosphere, I think, is going to be great. And we already know Ohio State's atmosphere is fantastic. They sell out in fact, I think they sell out every single game when they play at home. And in the playoffs, it's only going to get louder. It's only going to get noisier. Same thing with Texas. Same thing with Penn State. Penn State is going to go ballistic in this playoff game. And most of the time when I remember Penn State in home games, I go back to the whiteout game between Penn State and I believe it was either Minnesota or Michigan. I'm not entirely sure which team it was that they played, but I do know that whiteout game, it was so loud, and they were playing Mo Bamba. It was like, I'm sure all of you guys remember that exact same clip. I'm pretty sure it was Michigan that they ended up playing. But regardless of that, this is how the standings look right now. There's a lot of controversy because Boise State ends up getting a bye week, and a lot of people, they think like, okay, they didn't really face competent enough or good enough competition to even be considered to be getting a bye week compared to all of these other teams. But regardless, this is how the format works. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this format. If you're mad that maybe Alabama didn't make it into the college football playoffs. I didn't really think Alabama should have made it anyway, but again, I'm sure a lot of you Alabama fans, you think that they think that they deserve to make it in anyway. But that's really all that I have to say. Oregon being at number 1, being the only undefeated team in the entirety of the college football playoffs, makes sense that they were getting the number 1 seed. No real problems there. I actually really liked the teams that ended up getting selected for the college football playoffs this year. But again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. So that's all that I really have for this college football playoff segment. And now we're going to go ahead and go into the next segment, which is going to be talking about the it's going to be talking about Josh Allen and his performance against the Rams, because it was a very good game that he ended up playing against the Rams, and it most likely solidified himself for the MVP. So I'll talk about that game right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at Josh Allen and his performance against the Rams, and how he most likely solidified himself as the MVP after this ridiculous performance. So let me just go ahead and pull that up. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. So as we know, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, they've been sort of in the running for the favorites to win the MVP. I made the argument that Lamar Jackson, he had much better stats, and Josh Allen, he has the much better team record, and he also has really good stats to go along with that. I'm not saying that Josh Allen's stats are way worse than Lamar Jackson, but now that he has the much better team record, it seems like Josh Allen is steadily becoming the favorite. And it seems like in this game, he solidified the favorite right after this game, right? Like, this game, he sort of punched his ticket as the favorite for the for winning the MVP in the NFL. And he ended the game with 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He scored every single touchdown for the Bills in this game. And he became one of 2 players to end the game, to play a game with 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns. Again, one of 2 quarterbacks to have ever done that in the history of the NFL. He recorded 342 passing yards, and also recorded 82 yards on the ground. He was the leading rusher for the Bills in this matchup against the Rams. And it was a very, very intense shootout between the Rams as well. I mean, the fact that Josh Allen recorded 6 touchdowns and he still ended up losing should tell you just how much scoring there was in this game. The final score was 44-42, and this might be the best game of the week. This might have been the best game of the week. I thought it was going to be the matchup between the Packers and the Lions, which was a very good game, but this one might have been an even better game. Now, you could argue that it wasn't really all that good because defense did not really want to show up for the Bills at the very least, but regardless, this was a great game. Matthew Stafford, he ended the game with 2 passing touchdowns, 320 passing yards, and there was also Kyron Williams, who ended the game with 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. And on the receiving end, Puka Nacua is finally back, and he also recorded 162 receiving yards and 1 touchdown, along with Cooper Kupp, who recorded 92 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. So the Rams, they're finally healthy, and when they're healthy, they are a very dangerous offense. I will say that. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are fantastic receivers in their own right. And this is just the first time where we've actually seen them healthy this season, and they've capitalized on that game, and they've really proven themselves that they still got it, and that this Rams team is a very dangerous team when you give them a chance. But this game, like I said, it was very close. It started out with the Rams scoring a touchdown in the first quarter, and then the Buffalo Bills, they answered right back with a touchdown of their own, And then what happened was that the Rams, they ended up taking a field goal to make the score 10-7, but then the Bills, they ended up getting a punt blocked, and the Rams ended up returning that punt all the way back for a touchdown. Like, the punt was blocked, and as a result, they ended up scoring a touchdown off of it, making the score 17-7. But then, now that Josh Allen actually got the ball, in 4 plays, he ended up throwing a 41-yard passing touchdown to Johnson, and to make the score 14-17 and continue making the score competitive. But fear not, the Rams responded right back with a touchdown of their own to make the score 24-14 going into the second half. And in the second half, the Bills, they opened up with a punt, but then the Rams, they responded to that punt with a passing touchdown of their own. And actually, no, it was a rushing touchdown. Excuse me, the passing touchdown came a little bit later. But the Bills, they responded back with a touchdown of their own to make the score 21-31. But then the Rams, they responded back with a touchdown of their own to make the score 38-21. So so far, this game is like really in favor of the Rams. And the defense from the Bills wasn't really giving Josh Allen a good enough chance to actually win this game in the end. But going into the fourth quarter, Josh Allen opens up with another touchdown, 28-38. Then the defense finally gets a stop. They go 3 and out. And then Josh Allen responds with another touchdown to make the score 35-38. And to respond to that, the Rams went on an 11-play, 71-yard drive that lasted around 6 minutes, I believe, and ultimately ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown to make the score 44-35. And then Josh Allen responded back with a touchdown to make the score 42-44. But of course, the onside kick failed, and the Rams ended up winning this game in the end. So a lot of scoring coming in this game. A very, very, very competitive game from both of these teams. And the Bills, I mean, I will say this. Most of the time, when the Bills end up losing a game, it's an embarrassing way to go out, in my opinion. Like, there is one side of the ball that ends up playing very, very bad that is almost inexcusable. Like, they have 3 losses on the year. And one of those losses was against the Texans. In fact, that's the first loss that really comes to mind, where Josh Allen ended the game with only 131 passing yards. And again, it wasn't really a good game coming in from Josh Allen because he only completed 9 of his 30 passes. It was a very bad game. And then before that, it was against the Ravens, where they only put up 10 points. Meanwhile, the Ravens blew them out 35-10, right? So the first loss was a team collapse. Then the second loss was a quarterback collapse. And now this third loss is a defensive collapse. It's like, it's a really bad way to go out, and most of these times that the Bills end up losing, it's really embarrassing, and it's like one side isn't really impacting the game enough, more so than the other side, right? And it's like this could really affect them in the postseason, because like, what if both sides end up collapsing at the worst time? Who are you going to rely on? And the fact that the Bills gave up 44 points, I'm sorry, for a team that is that was 10-2 up until this point, that is inexcusable. And the Bills and their defense, it's usually like a strong point, aside from Josh Allen being Josh Allen. And the fact that they ended up getting outscored this badly, they didn't really give Josh Allen a chance to win this game. Especially like, special teams having their punt blocked. That was really the backbreaker. And if that punt block did not happen, chances are this game would have gone into overtime. But that's neither here nor there. That's just part of the game. And I completely understand that. But I can't get over the fact of how embarrassing this loss was for the defensive side. I mean, again, this performance sort of improves Josh Allen's chance of winning the MVP. Especially that Lamar Jackson is, and the Ravens, they had a bye week in this year. Now, one thing that is not going to help is the fact that they ended up losing this game, right? Like, team record is a very important thing when you're looking at value coming in from quarterbacks and value coming in from players in general. So the fact that he ended up losing this game is definitely not ideal, but I will say, like, it doesn't necessarily matter at this point because the Bills, they have a much better team record than the Ravens. They're 10-3 compared to the Ravens being 8-5. So people are going to, and voters, they're going to look at the team record more so than they're going to look at the stats. And then when they look at the stats, they're going to see that the argument is pretty close. Like, the argument is really, really close on who should win the MVP in this year and who shouldn't win the MVP. But right now, it seems like Josh Allen is going to be the front runner just based off of this performance. Like, people and voters can easily say this game was not Josh Allen's fault. And they're going to look at the stats. Like, I'll actually pull up the stats and, like, go ahead and do a quick comparison to these players and their stats. So Lamar has 3,290 passing yards compared to Josh Allen's 3,033 passing yards. Again, 200-yard passing difference is significant. Now, the passing touchdowns, Josh Allen has 23 of those compared to Lamar Jackson, who has 29 of those. And in the interception department, Lamar Jackson has 3 interceptions compared to Josh Allen, who is throwing 5 interceptions. Now, on the ground, I think is where the quarterback duel is going to, that's really going to determine who is the better quarterback in terms of, like, which quarterback can actually run the ball a lot better. Because, like, both of these guys, they're fantastic at passing the ball. Like, we already know that they're fantastic passers, and they're also fantastic rushers, but who is the best and who is the better one? So let me just try and let me go ahead and look at the stats and see which quarterback has better rushing stats, because most of the time, like, you don't really expect a quarterback to, like, be super good at running the ball, but when they are, it's something to see. And let me see, and there's a text message that I don't want to get into as of right now. I'm trying to find the rushing stats. Hold on, just give me 1 second. Josh Allen rushing stats, because that is going to be, I really think that's going to be the biggest deciding factor in this game. And let's see. So for this season, Josh Allen has 416 yards on the ground, and he also has 9 touchdowns on the ground. So if we look at Lamar Jackson's stats and his rushing yards on the ground, in this season he has 678 rushing yards, which is way more than Josh Allen. But he doesn't have as many rushing touchdowns as Josh Allen, where he has only 3 compared to Josh Allen, who has only 9. So it's going to be a very intense duel to see who ends up being the MVP. I will say this, however. Before, Josh Allen wasn't my favorite to win the MVP. Now it seems like he's, I didn't even consider Josh Allen. I mean, I did, but, like, only because it's like he was right there in terms of voting and things. But I really thought that Lamar Jackson was going to run away with this award. Now I see that it's much closer than just Lamar Jackson running away with the award. So that's all that I really have to say in this third segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where I recap all of the games that took place over the weekend in the NFL. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we're back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this segment, we're going to be recapping all of the games that took place over the weekend in the NFL. I'm going to do it a little bit quick, just because we are running a little bit low on time. And usually I would do this for a lot longer, but, unfortunately I did get held up in a meeting, so I really apologize for that. But let's dive right in and get into this segment, we're going to start with the Jets and their game against Miami. This game was a pretty solid game. They ended up going into overtime with the score tied 26-26. This was the first game in Aaron Rodgers' career as a Jet where he ended up recording 300 or more passing yards. So he had 339 passing yards in this game and 1 touchdown. It was very good. Garrett Wilson played very well in this game, and so did Davante Adams. Garrett Wilson ended with 114 receiving yards, and Davante Adams ended with 109 receiving yards and a touchdown. Excuse me. Now, obviously, this wasn't enough to go up against the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins, they are pushing themselves to try and make it to the playoffs now that they have Tua Tagovailoa. Tua ended up recording 331 passing yards of the day and also recorded 2 touchdowns. And there was also Devon, excuse me, Jesus Christ, I cannot pronounce that last name. Devon Achane, who ended up recording 1 touchdown, but only 24 rushing yards. It wasn't a really good rushing day for the Dolphins, but nevertheless, it was a great passing day, especially for Tyreek Hill, who ended up recording 115 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. I believe this was the first good game that Tyreek Hill has had in a very, very, very long time. And this game ultimately ended up being decided by who got the ball first, and the answer was the Dolphins. The Dolphins quickly responded in overtime with a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers never got to see the ball, and the Dolphins ended up winning. Much like Aaron Rodgers throughout most of his career, he leads the team on a game-winning or game-tying drive, and his team would let him down with the game in the balance. I mean, this loss, it wasn't on Aaron Rodgers. It was on the defense for allowing them to score in overtime, as well as allowing them to kick a field goal to tie the game and actually give them a chance to even play in overtime. I will say that, the Dolphins, they are fighting for a playoff spot, so it's not like they are a bad team. But again, this defense and this Jets team is absolutely awful. Now, with this loss, the Jets have been eliminated from the postseason for the 14th straight year, I believe. And this is the longest active streak of not being able to make the playoffs for an NFL team. And it's not good. It's really not looking good in New York. And speaking of New York, I might as well bring up the other team, the Giants. They ended up losing to the Saints 14-11. This game was absolutely awful. Drew Lock threw 1 interception, 227 passing yards. There was absolutely nothing going for us on the ground. The Saints had, with Derek Carr, he threw a touchdown and he also threw an interception, but it doesn't matter. You're going up against the Giants, and it also should be noted that the Giants, they ended up losing because the field goal was blocked, and, Shador, you are a New York Giant. That's really all that I can say. It's either Shador or Cam Ward. One of those quarterbacks is going to be the future for the New York Giants. And, I mean, the Giants are 2-11, and this game was really, I knew that the Giants were going to lose in this game. Everyone knew that the Giants were going to lose in this game because that's just what they do. And speaking of former Giants, the Saquon Barkley, of course, he ends up winning in this matchup against the Panthers with the Eagles. I mean, Jalen Hurts, he played all right, 108 passing yards. He did throw for 2 passing touchdowns, and he also ended up running in for a touchdown, but obviously Saquon Barkley ended with 124 rushing yards, and was the best player for the Eagles in this matchup. Now, I will say, Bryce Young, he almost ended up winning this game for the Panthers. He did throw an interception, but he did also throw a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard ran for a touchdown and ran for 92 yards, but he almost led the team on a game-winning drive at the very end of the game. But there was a touchdown pass that he threw, which ended up getting called back because it was ruled as an incomplete pass. And again, he was very close to driving the ball down the field over 90-plus yards. So very, very impressive stuff coming in from Bryce Young. But again, the Eagles, they improved their record to 11-2, and I believe right now they are 1 game away from making it to the top spot in the entirety of the NFC. I mean, they just have to get past the Lions, which it doesn't really seem like the Lions are really going to be slowing down all that much. And another former New York player, Sam Darnold, for the Vikings, played phenomenally in this game. The Vikings, they ended up beating the Falcons 42-21. Sam Darnold threw for 5 touchdowns, 347 passing yards in this game. And the receiving duo of Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson were phenomenal. Jordan Addison ended with 133 receiving yards, and Jefferson ended with 132 receiving yards. And similar to how there was a 1-yard difference between these two receivers, there was also a 1 touchdown difference between these two receivers. Jordan Addison got 3 receiving touchdowns, and Jefferson got 2 receiving touchdowns. Overall, fantastic game from the Vikings. Kirk Cousins has been playing absolutely awful with the Falcons so far. And after having a ridiculous 500-yard passing game in the season, Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's sort of on the decline right now. He threw for 344 yards, but he also threw 2 interceptions, and he didn't throw a single touchdown in this game. And all the touchdowns for the Falcons ended up coming on the ground, and it's not really looking good for the Falcons. I will say this is like, this is supposed to happen when you have Kirk Cousins. I don't know what it is, but now in the next game, Kirk Cousins is going to play like he's Peyton Manning because his team is under 500. So I would not be surprised that the Falcons end up winning the next game that they have in this coming week. But this was a very bad loss for the Falcons. A very good win for Sam Darnold and the Vikings. And more games to talk about. Hold on just 1 second. Let me go through them. The Steelers, they ended up beating the Browns. They ended up winning 27-14 in this matchup. And Russell Wilson ended up recording 158 passing yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns. Najee Harris ended up running in for a touchdown as well. And when you're the Browns, you have Jameis Winston. So, of course, you're going to have some good and some bad. 2 passing touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions in this game. And those 2 interceptions ended up costing him. The Raiders, they're also in a fight to try and draft Shedeur Sanders. They're in a fight between the Giants. Baker Mayfield ended up playing, all right. 3 passing touchdowns, 95 yards, and 2 interceptions in this game. And on the Raiders side, they don't really have that good of a quarterback right now, which is why they're hoping they can draft Shedeur. So they flip-flop between 2 really less than mediocre quarterbacks in Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder. Aiden O'Connell threw an interception, and Desmond Ridder, he didn't really do much in this game. So not really any noteworthy things to talk about in this one. The Seahawks, they did beat the Cardinals, and they now lead their division. They won 30-18. I don't know what's going on. I think Kyler Murray is playing a little bit too much Warzone, and I don't really blame him. He threw for 259 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And that was really, the killer, the fact that he threw those 2 interceptions. Now, Geno Smith ended up completing 24 of the 30 passes that he threw for 1 touchdown. Now, I also completely forgot to mention this, but Sam Darnold almost had as many touchdowns, 5, as incompletions, 6, which is fantastic. And for the Seahawks, Zach Charbonnet, forgive me if I messed up that last name, ended up rushing for 2 touchdowns and recording 134 yards on the ground. So, overall, very high-scoring games in this week. The Niners, they ended up beating the Bears 38-13. It's the Bears, so I don't have to say all that much. Brock Purdy played pretty solid, 325 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. And there was also, of course, they had a ridiculous running back, Isaac Guerrero, who ended up recording 2 rushing touchdowns on the night. And there was also Patrick Taylor Jr., who ended up recording 1 touchdown on the night for San Fran as well. And on the Bears side, they just continue finding more ways to lose. Now, the Chiefs, this one was a really big game because a lot of people, they are very, very confident now that the Chiefs are one of the luckiest teams in the NFL. And, and they have this weird magic power where it's like they are able to win. They're able to win games when it seems like they play some of the worst football ever imaginable. And the way that they won this game was off of a game-winning field goal. Now, this field goal looked like it was going to miss, but it was doinked in and it made it. Like, it was doinked, it got doinked from the left side, and it was able to scoot into the right side and make the field goal, right? Like, it was a very, very close field goal, and it ultimately ended up winning the game for the Chiefs. They ended up winning 19-17. Patrick Mahomes threw for 210 passing yards and one touchdown. And for the Chargers, Justin Herbert ended with 213 passing yards and one touchdown. And then there was also Gus Edwards, who ended with a rushing touchdown on the ground. So those were all the games. The Bengals, they're going to play the Cowboys in this matchup. I expect the Bengals to easily beat the Cowboys. Funny stat, over the weekend, Arizona ended up recording more touchdowns in Arizona State, the college that ended up making the college football playoffs. They ended up recording more touchdowns in the Cowboys Stadium in that one game than the Cowboys did in their entire season so far. So that's a little bit funny, very hilarious. So I think that the Bengals are going to end up winning in this matchup against the Cowboys easily. But we'll see how that game goes. Again, that game is going to happen at 8:15 on ESPN, so be sure to tune into that. And with this out of the way, that's the end of the fourth segment. So now we're going to go into the special fifth segment where I look at the NBA's power rankings. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we're back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we're going to look at the NBA's power rankings that were released not actually over the weekend, but that were released earlier today. I think they dropped this about 2 hours ago maybe. So we're going to go ahead and look at these power rankings. Hold on just 1 second, because for some reason these power rankings aren't showing up. There we go. So, of course, Cleveland is going to be at number 1. They continue to win. So, because they continue to win, they're going to end up keeping that number 1 spot. I have no problems with this at all. And, they did lose to Miami on Sunday, but again, that's just a minor setback. But they were able to win the more important games. Now, Evan Mobley did get hurt, and this is sort of why I feel like their ranking hasn't really changed, because Evan Mobley ended up getting hurt in this game. Excuse me. And this is, if Evan Mobley gets hurt, then, he is a very important player. But there's going to be a little bit of an asterisk in that game. So, next team, of course, the Boston Celtics, another team that continues to win. Over the weekend, they were able to win in their games. They did so without really much trouble. And, actually, they ended up losing to the Grizzlies over the weekend. So, that's just... But the game that I was really referring to was the game against the Bucks, where they ended up winning. I was unable to watch that game against the Grizzlies, but... Regardless, this team, they're just that good of a team. They're the Boston Celtics, and putting them at anywhere that isn't at number 2 or number 3 would be blasphemous, regardless of their outcomes. Now, the Thunder, this is good. I was expecting the Thunder to make a jump after these last few wins, and I really have no problem with the Thunder being ranked at number 3. They should be ranked at number 3. They should stay at number 3. They are, without a doubt, one of the best teams in the NBA and one of the very few contenders that actually deserve that title. I think that the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Thunder, they're by far the clear-cut favorite contenders in the NBA right now. The Dallas Mavericks, they move all the way up from 5 to 4, which I guess makes sense given how ridiculous Luka Doncic has been in a lot of these games, and the fact that they're actually able to, they're able to win a lot of these games. Like, they've been on an upward track so far. So I don't really see a problem with the Dallas Mavericks being ranked this high. I mean, they're 4th in the Western Conference right now, and they ended up winning their last 4 games in the month of December. And, I mean, they've continued their win streak since November 25th. The one time where they did lose was earlier that day, November 24th, when they ended up losing to the Miami Heat. But in the span between the 16th of November and now, they've only lost 1 game, which is very, very impressive. So that alone deserves them to be in, that gives them the spot. That gives them the spot. And excuse me. The Grizzlies, I believe they take the spot mainly because they now that they have Ja Morant, they also ended up beating the Celtics at home with Ja Morant. So again, no real problems with their rankings. They are ranked lower than the Dallas Mavericks because earlier this month the Mavericks ended up beating the Grizzlies. So I don't really see a problem with this at all. And over the past month, similar to the Mavericks, they've been winning in every single one of their games. In fact, one of the few losses that they've had were either against the Lakers last month, the Warriors, or the Denver Nuggets. And they beat the Nuggets before they ended up losing to the Nuggets. So, you take the good with the bad, but no real problems with them being ranked at number 5 as of right now. Now, Golden State, I do have a problem with them being ranked at number 6. I do not think they are a legitimate team. I think that most of these wins that they're getting are fluke wins. And, I mean, this last matchup against the Timberwolves, that was embarrassing by Rudy Gobert. And now, Steph Curry and Buddy Hield, they played phenomenal in that game. But regardless, I just don't see this Warriors team being ranked at 6. I genuinely don't. I don't think not only have they not really been winning enough games to be able to accentuate this ranking, especially moving up in the rankings. I really don't understand that. Like, these last few games of this month, they lost to Denver, they beat the Houston Rockets, they lost to the Timberwolves, and then they beat the Timberwolves. That does not warrant them to move all the way up to ranking number 6. I don't agree with that at all. And last month over in November, they went on going into this month, they went on a 5-game losing streak. Are we really going to reward a team that went on a 5-game losing streak with this? No, that's unfair. Houston dropping all the way down and getting ranked lower than Golden State is also a little bit unfair. Now, I understand that Houston hasn't been able to beat Golden State since James Harden and Russell Westbrook were on the roster, but this team is still a very competent team. I don't agree with the fact that they're ranked lower than the Golden State Warriors. I really just don't. The Knicks moving up to 8, that makes a lot more sense. Now it seems like the Knicks are getting into a little bit more of a groove and actually getting their chemistry down, so I have no problem with this ranking either. The Orlando Magic moving a little bit downwards. I mean, again, they're not a very good team without let me rephrase that. They're not as good of a team as they are without Paolo Banchero. But they are a very surprising team. And I will say that I did not expect them to still have a very positive record without having Paolo Banchero. Franz Wagner has been phenomenal in a lot of these games, and he might be in the argument for being an all-star player this year. We never know. I mean, also, let me see. So for the Clippers, they're at number 10. I don't know about that. I think the Nuggets should be ranked a little bit higher. Miami Heat, they're at 11 after beating the Denver Nuggets, so that makes a lot of sense. Timberwolves moving all the way up from 16 to 12. I think I'd rather them be at 16. I don't know. I don't really see them being there. I really don't. Now, the Nuggets being ranked at number 13 is a little bit unfortunate, especially for Nikola Jokic. Now, listen to these numbers. Nikola Jokic, when he's on the court, The Nuggets have the best offensive rating, the best net rating, the best field goal percentage, the best three-point field goal percentage, and the best assist-to-turnover ratio. Without him on the court, they have the 30th offensive rating, 29th net rating, 30th in field goal percentage, 28th in three-point field goal percentage, and 28th in assist-to-turnover ratio. There is no player in the NBA that is more valuable than Nikola Jokic right now. And a couple nights ago, Nikola Jokic, he is the third player in NBA history with at least 56 points, 16 rebounds, and 8 assists in a single game. He is the first player to ever do this in a losing effort. It's incredible. The Nuggets, now I will say, they did end up losing to the Wizards over the weekend, which was an embarrassing loss. They did beat the Hawks in a very thrilling game. They ended up scoring 141 points compared to the Hawks scoring 111. But losing to the Wizards is definitely going to, it's definitely like not a good sign. And they also ended up losing to the Cavs as well. But, this Jokic, in these efforts, he became the first player ever to record 100 plus points, 30 plus rebounds, and 15 plus assists over any 2-game span. He did it on back-to-back nights. He's the first player ever to record 130 plus points, 50 plus rebounds, and 25 plus assists over any 3-game span. First player ever to record 160 plus points, 60 plus rebounds, 30 plus assists over a 4-game span. First player ever to record 190 plus points, 70 plus rebounds, 40 plus assists over any 5-game span. Whew! That's a lot of stuff that Jokic just broke. So, if he's not the MVP, I don't know who is. The Hawks moving up to 14, I don't know about that. A little bit of fluky wins coming in, having a 13-12 record, I don't really agree with that at all. Why are the Bucks ranked higher than the Lakers? I don't know. I do not know why the Bucks are ranked higher than the Lakers, but they do not deserve that. I can tell you that right now. In fact, where are the Lakers? 19th? What? All right. So, clearly, the media does not like LA right now. Clearly. Because it makes zero sense why they're ranked so low. I do not agree with that at all. They are on a little bit of a slump. They did lose to Trae Young and the Hawks off of a game winner after LeBron ended up dropping almost 40 points and a triple-double, 39, 10, and 11. Makes no sense why they dropped all the way down, lower than Philadelphia. Makes zero sense to me. Lower than Sacramento, again, zero sense. Maybe lower than Phoenix. That makes sense. But the Bucks should not be this high at all. And the Hawks, they should also not be this high at all. Seriously, 12-13, 7-15. They're ranked higher than 13 and 11. This is so far the worst power rankings list I've ever seen. So far, the Spurs ranked at 20th. That's also a little bit unfair. Now, the Bulls, that makes a little bit of sense, moving up a little bit. The Nets moving down, that makes a little bit more sense. The Pistons moving up, that also makes sense. The Raptors makes a little bit of sense. The Pacers moving all the way down, that also makes sense. They've been way less than mediocre. Charlotte moving up, I guess. Utah, I guess. Portland, again, I don't know about Portland. And then these two teams are by far the worst teams in the NBA. So it makes a little bit of sense. But again, so far, probably the worst power rankings list I've ever seen. Anthony's in the chat. How's it going? Again, definitely the worst power rankings list so far, because there is no way that the Lakers are a worse team than the 76ers. There's just no way. There's also no way that they're a worse team than the Kings. There is no argument for that either. Phoenix, you can make an argument for that. The Bucks, they should move all the way down. They should not get any kind of credit for winning any of these games. They need to do it a little bit more consistently. This is the first time that the Bucks have actually had a positive record this season. Do not think they should be ranked over the Lakers whatsoever. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I think that was one of the worst power rankings list I've ever gone over. But that's all that I really have to say. And that's all that I can do for this segment. That's it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us. Remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it be a hot take, whether it be a burning question, or anything that you've got to say. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. Super Chat's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, gsmcpodcast.net. It does the same thing, makes the show much more interactive. That's all that I really have to say to you guys, and that's the end of the segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired.